Themes and Perspectives in International Development and Education, Low-Cost Private Schools, Nigeria, and the Marketisation of Education by Alistair Barfield. In 2015, the United Nations set out a series of goals to be completed by all of its member states before the year 2030. These included a number of goals relating to basic human rights, including the Sustainable Development Goal number 4, quality education. This is described as ensuring inclusive and equitable quality education and promoting lifelong learning opportunities for all. Since 1948's Declaration of Human Rights, access to free education is a fundamental human right and cannot be seen as an economic investment. Globally, 750 million adults are illiterate. 60% of these, unfortunately, are women. Clearly, alternatives must be considered for these developing nations. Unfortunately, for many developing nations, this has proved to be problematic as these governments lack infrastructure and the resources to provide quality free education. So, they look towards private corporations to fill this gap. In Britain, private schools are considered a concept solely reserved for the elite, those who can afford a choice in their child's education, or viewed as an archaic institution that promotes inequality by providing those with pre-existing wealth access to a higher level of education. However, in developing nations, a new phenomenon has appeared: low-cost private schools. These are widely occurring in the developing world, including South Asia, Latin America, and Africa. These schools provide reasonable alternatives to the issues prevalent in public school systems. These issues may include a lack of resources, an extremely high student-to-teacher ratio, with buildings decaying due to lack of funds, and a lack of government accountability. One country with prevalent issues in its education system is the West African nation of Nigeria. In the 1980s, Nigeria's public school system collapsed. This is partly attributable to brain drain, a phenomena still prevalent today, where those who are well educated and therefore can qualify to be teachers leave Nigeria to go to more prosperous nations, with attendance in Nigerian schools being the lowest of any nation globally. Another factor in the disruption of children's education are conflicts. Conflicts occur throughout the entire nation, and the rise of insurgency from extremist groups such as Boko Haram has also hindered the education system, with over 490 classrooms being destroyed in the last 5 years in the northeastern states of Nigeria alone. Nigeria, like many of the nations that seek low-cost private schools as a viable alternative, suffers from institutionalized corruption. The Corruption Perceptions Index is an annual index published by Transparency International, an international non-governmental organization, a think tank that seeks to combat rampant corruption and criminal activities associated with corruption. Nigeria has consistently ranked within the 35 most corrupt nations in the world. This endemic corruption was described by Nigerian educationalist Odeleye as the corruption endemic which has eaten deep into the moral fabric of all Nigerian society. Education as a government institution is no stranger to this corruption. In these nations, low-cost private schools can be viewed as a more viable alternative because they have more direct routes to funding and they receive money directly from the children and have access to their own resources, particularly aid from foreign governments. Low-cost private schools may also have further access where public schools may not, being created in illegal slums or extremely rural remote areas, giving children access to education who may not have previously had the opportunity to do so. A common occurrence in public schools in Nigeria is absentee teachers, with many children arriving at class to find their teacher has decided to simply not attend. Low-cost private schools, can be argued, offer a level of accountability for their teachers who must attend to receive a wage. However, low-cost private schools are not without their detractors and often cause controversy. From a preliminary observation, low-cost private schools do appear to be a viable short-term alternative. However, assumption fails to acknowledge the nuances associated with low-cost private schools from deprived areas. Research suggests that 98% of all children attending low-cost private schools were previously attending a state-funded public school. With 85% of schools in Lagos being run as private businesses, one has to question the ethics surrounding profiteering over the inherent inequalities present in Nigeria's public education system. The Nigerian government has a lack of oversight and accountability for these low-cost private schools, many of which are entirely unregulated. The Nigerian government has therefore become a pseudo-regulatory body that is virtually powerless instead of a provider of basic human right education. This is problematic. Another commonly cited issue is the lack of evidence to show how successful low-cost private schools actually are. The UK's government does offer financial aid to Nigeria's education system through the Department for International Development. The DFID's goal is to promote global sustainable development and eliminate world poverty through offering financial aid to developing nations. In recent years, almost all educational funding through the DFID has transitioned from aiding nations' public school systems to offering financial support to multinational corporations and educational institutions, including Bridge International Academies, the world's largest provider of low-cost private schools, and Pearson Education, a multinational British educational corporation. This funding has drawn heavy criticism regarding a number of controversies in recent years. Giving financial aid to developing nations is an admirable concept, one that we assume is solely for the benefit of the nations less developed than ours. However, the UK government's funding of education in Nigeria is not solely an altruistic act, something that has continued to concern me and has changed my initial opinions regarding low-cost private schools. The DFID work alongside companies such as multinational beverage manufacturer Coca-Cola and Discovery Inc., a large American mass media corporation. Funding has been given to almost exclusively for-profit organisations. The use of British taxpayers' money to pay for-profit corporations to teach impoverished children for a fee is considered extremely controversial, with opponents of this suggesting that the British government is complicit in the marketisation of education, where the inequalities present in Nigeria are being exploited for profit. The DFID's mission statement has always been to reduce inequality. However, 98% of low-cost private schools in Lagos have been created in areas with pre-existing public schools. This is not addressing the issues present in Nigeria's education system and goes against the DFID's entire stated role. Another controversy is the accusation of an apparent conflict of interest, with two high-profile members of the DFID having roles within the company Pearson. This company, the DFID, has and will continue to fund. Clearly, Nigeria's education system is failing its most vulnerable citizens. It enables a lack of accountability for both the teachers and the schools themselves, as well as the endemic corruption issues, a lack of infrastructure, and brain drain. These needs must be addressed. Low-cost private schools do not address any of the inherent problems. They merely offer a temporary solution with no evidence to suggest its effectiveness. The UK government's complicity in the proliferation of this profiteering from the most vulnerable must be addressed, as these concerns cannot simply be ignored. The Nigerian government has a duty to provide the most basic human rights, including free education of its children. Funding should be provided by the UK government to enable this, and hopefully create a society where all of Nigeria's citizens are literate and human capital is valued.